I'm a barber at Oddfellows Barbershop. I've been working there since January, and I've been barbering for 4 years. I guess I'm going to start with why I'm here. I find it extremely motivating for me personally when I come to these events and I hear people get up here and talk about what they do, and to hear the passion in whatever it is and to see the excitement in their face when they're talking about it. It doesn't have to be anything that I even like. It's just something that clearly they like, and it's who they are, and it makes them them. I've been coming to a couple of these events. The first one I went to was in April. It was April 26th. I know that because it was my birthday. So I showed up. I was more nervous that night than I was tonight to even get up on the mic. I walked in, I met a couple people, saw a couple people that I knew. Meech got on the mic. He's like, yeah, we got a couple speakers tonight, but before we do that, it's Jeremy's birthday. Can we say happy birthday to him? Everyone's like, happy birthday, Jeremy! And then, not everyone was looking at me. A couple people were like, oh, okay, happy birthday, Jeremy, And, but not everyone knew me. So everyone talked, and, everyone was really inspiring. And the end of the night came, and Meech got back on the mic, and he was like, I know we all said happy birthday to Jeremy, but can we sing happy birthday to Jeremy? And so everyone started singing happy birthday, and everyone's heads going around. They're like, who the hell is Jeremy, right? And Meech realized that, not everyone knew me, right? I'm not him. And so he gets on the mic and he's like, hey everybody, Jeremy's the one with all the tattoos, and everyone's head just went right to me. And so everyone sang me happy birthday, and then at the end of the night I was like, man, maybe I could get up in front of everybody. I'm going to do it by the end of the year. So even when Meech asked me if I could do this one, I was like finding excuses to be like, oh well, maybe the next one, maybe the one next month, yeah, I'll do that one, but I'm here. So so now I'm going to talk about myself, I guess. I'm from Truro. I went to CEC. I graduated in 2009. So when I was in grade 12, I didn't actually have a list of 3 things that I wanted to be, but looking back, there was clearly 3 things that I wanted to be. And first one was gym teacher, because I love gym class, straight up, that's it. Second one was firefighter, because my mom was always like, you should be RCMP, or you should be a cop. And I'm like, I don't want to hold a gun, for one. And I was like, well, I could still be a hero and, save people from fires. I'm not as scared of people, fire can't shoot me, right? And number 3 was barber. And so I went to a guidance counselor, and they kind of discouraged me from all 3. Gym teacher, yeah, everybody wants to be a gym teacher. Firefighter, I didn't have volunteer work by grade 12, so I couldn't be a firefighter. And barbering, it was like, go see how much barbers make, or like look online, and at the time, they were making 30 grand. And so I was discouraged from all 3 of those. And I thought all the smart kids went to university, so I went to Acadia. I was so smart that Christmas graduated. I moved back home. I started working the same job I was working the summer before, as like store standards, which is like going to get carrots, bring them back in, doing carryouts, all that. And so I worked with a couple buddies. I was hanging out with one of them after work one night, and he had been made fun of all day long for the haircut that he got like the day before or whatever. And so I was like, you know what? I could give you a better haircut. So I took a pair of clippers, took a pair of scissors, and I cleaned them up. And everybody, and like, I remember he was like, oh man, this is a good haircut. And he went upstairs, and his mom was like, oh my God, Nathan, you look so great. And just like, oh, Jeremy, you should think about being a barber. And I'm like, well, I have been thinking about it, but And so I went to work the next day. He worked at 10, I worked at 12. So when I showed up at 12, everybody was already talking about this haircut that I gave him, because he went from being made fun of the day before to being like, yo, that's a good haircut, I guess. It probably wasn't that good, but. Yeah, so I was super motivated. I remember going and talking to my parents and being like, I want to be a barber. This is what I want to be. I've never been this motivated to like get into anything. So, but at the time, I was 18, and like I hadn't traveled much before then. I went to Quebec in grade 9 and Maine in grade 11, and everything else was like the Maritimes. So I kind of was like, it was a smaller scale, and I was like, well, is there any barber? Like I went looking for barber courses in Nova Scotia, couldn't find anything. And so my mom's hairstylist told her, you know, tell Jeremy to go to take hairstyling, you know, get the license, that's all you need, and then you can start from there. And so I went to the NSCC website. I was going to sign up. I was moving to New Glasgow. I was going to take like hairstyling at the NSCC there, and I was on the website looking at the description of the course, and it was like, you know, top trends in men's and women's hair, and blah, 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 and perms. And when I read perms, I thought of my grandmother, and I was like, I don't want to cut my grandmother's hair. I don't want to give my grandmother a perm. I want to be a barber. So I chickened out. I didn't actually like chicken out because it obviously worked out, but like I didn't take hairstyling. I took marketing. And so I did 2 years, took that, got the diploma. After I graduated, I got my first tattoo. I was 21. Then I moved back home. I took recreation at the NSCC because I didn't want to go to university at that time to finish out the diploma into a degree. So I moved home and I took rec. I graduated that, but it was more of a hobby of mine. Like I always played sports, so I was interested in what I learned, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. So after I finished that, I was kind of, you know, back in the same position. Like, what do I want to be? You know, I had all these ideas going through my head, and I went on a trip to London, Ontario. And so I don't know, it's kind of a lame story, but I was driving through Toronto, and you know, if you ever went to London and you looked off and saw Toronto, it's like the CN Tower is like this big, you know, like way off in the distance. And I had never traveled ever, so I was like super motivated the whole way up. I was on my phone, like just looking at stuff on Instagram. I'm like, what am I supposed to be? Like, what am I doing next year? And so I was just looking at pictures of like people with tattoos and like people with nice hair, and I was like, what is it about all this stuff that I want to do? And it kind of brought me back to be a barber. You know, you've always wanted to do it. You've always been told by, well, my mom was always like, whenever I brought up tattoos, she was like, if you get tattoos, you won't get a real job. And I was like, okay, I'm going to get a good job and I'm going to get covered in tattoos, Mom. I'm sorry. On the way back from London, I went online, and this time I was like, you know what, I'm not just going to look at Nova Scotia courses. I'm going to go, like, it doesn't matter. I'll move to like BC, I'll move wherever to take barbering, and it ended up just being a course in St. John, New Brunswick. And so I had graduated from rec in April, and I was already registered and attending class by August for barbering. I did 7 months there. Essentially the course was like an apprenticeship, so I'd walk in, first person there, sign their name on the board, they would get first cut if we got any. And then I finished that course. I ended up messaging. I knew I wanted to move to the city, and at the time, like there was only a few shops that I really wanted to work at that did, you know, classic style haircuts and like straight razor shaves and all that stuff. So I messaged Mark from Sailor Bubs and asked him if they were hiring, and at the time they weren't, but a couple things worked out in my favor that they were moving locations. So I had a job and I moved down, and like in barber school, the most amount of cuts I did was 8, and it was because it was a snow day and no one showed up except for me and the teacher. And so I did 8, and my first day at Sailor Bubs I did 16. And I remember after my first day I went home and I just laid on my bed and I was like, man, you can't do this. Like, you can't do this. You did 8 in barber school, you're doing 16 now. Like, they're gonna know that you don't actually know everything about cutting hair, which I still don't know everything about cutting hair. But then it was like 35 minutes of me laying like the wrong way on my bed, just looking up at the sky, going, you can't do this, you can't do this. And then all of a sudden it was just like, but you did it. You finished your first day, you know? You did 16 when the most amount of haircuts you did was 8. So yeah, I worked at Sailor Bob's for 2.5 years. Decided in the new year I needed to make a switch for myself. It was just more personal than anything. I decided that I wanted to be part of something smaller, so I started working at Oddfellows alongside my buddy Joel, who's also here. I also wrote notes just to make sure I stayed on track here.
Hi, Joel.
Yeah, so I guess just like wrap up barbering. The reasons why I got into it were, obviously I thought it was cool. I thought I could get covered in tattoos. I thought it was cool the way I made my friend feel, taking well, making someone feel better about themselves, and also just the idea of like hanging out with my friends. But what I've learned since starting is that like you create crazy relationships with some of these people that are coming to see you. You choose who your friends are. You choose who you message on a Saturday night and say, hey, you want to go grab a beer? But you don't, but as a barber, I don't choose who comes and sits in my chair. But that doesn't mean that I don't build the same kind of relationship. I've had people, you know, that are clients that become friends. I actually had a client that became a friend, and then I needed a place to move in, and he was looking for a roommate, so we became roommates. I didn't realize that, you know, I could travel with barbering. There's these things called guest spots, and so essentially all it is I go on Instagram and I find a shop that's cool in a place that I want to go visit. I message them and say, hey, you know, I'm a barber from Nova Scotia. I'd like to come up that way. I'm going to be there this date to this date. Can I work at your shop? Is there an extra chair? And so far it's just been, yeah, we'd love to have you. And so I didn't know that was a possibility. Yeah, so I guess to end this, like, what am I doing now? I'm talking to you guys. I didn't know I could do this at the beginning of the year, but here I am. I'm working at Oddfellows Tuesday to Saturday. I'm trying to set up more guest spots, you know, to travel, but also work at the same time, because, you know, it's always good networking whenever I go to another shop. And it's honestly wicked because, you know, at events like this, you come and you know that everyone's good people, but you might not have much in common. But like when I go to a barbershop that's like the same style as what I'm into, you walk in the door and you already feel like you have like several things in common. Yeah, so I guess I'll end it with, well, you got a question, Meech.
So what's the next step on your project?
Oh, Meech knows more than everyone else in the room. I don't know. Well, personally, I would like to, like, traveling is what motivates me, and so I have these ideas that I'm actually working with one of the speakers earlier, Matthew, about. And so I would like to travel, you know, across Canada and and get him to film the whole thing, and so we can share it with other people. I'm gonna check my notes one more time. Dope. Make sure I get everything here. Oh yeah, so I'm not a public speaker, but I would like to be eventually, and you know I will be. But all right, so I'm doing better than I thought I was. But I would like to be included in more things, so I would like to get out and, you know, like, well, if there's photographers in the room, I always love, you know, trading haircuts for photos. Videographers, same thing. You know, people that run podcasts, I'd love to talk on more podcasts. I've never talked on any, so when I say more, I mean any. And, oh, we got a question? Yeah.
Do you teach barbering to kids in the community?
To teach?
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah, it could be. That's a good idea. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm down. Yeah. Yes, I'd love to. And I guess the last thing is, even if your job, you don't feel like we could exchange, you know, service for service or anything, I'm trying to fill my time off from the shop with like more, I guess, healthy stuff that I can learn more about myself. And like I love recreation, so like hikes, you know, I just tried out bouldering at 7 Bays, love doing that. I love kayaking, you know, that kind of stuff. So I know this room's full of people that love to do that kind of stuff, so if you're doing that, send me a message. I might not be able to, but you never know, right? Thank you, everyone.